What is up, Oilers Nation? Live Wednesday, March 23rd. Back to recap that game against Dallas. Talk a little about the trade deadline. A lot of people were in here on Sunday when we were talking about what the Oilers could do, and I think after watching what Ken Holland did do, everyone kind of sat there and went, yeah, predictable. But we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Excuse me while I make sure all the chats are firing here. I see we are live on Twitter, Facebook, and we should be live on Twitch. I don't know why we're not yet. That'll sort itself out. Also live on the Nation Network YouTube. If you don't subscribe to the Nation Network YouTube, go do that right now. Honestly, right now, go do it. Subscribe to Daily Faceoff while you're at it as well. Before we get into the trade deadline, let's take a look back at that last game. It was a loss to the Dallas Stars in a game that probably shouldn't have been a loss to the Dallas Stars. The Oilers get goals from Kyler Yamamoto. He's a hot guy. They get goals from Evander Kane and Leon Draisaitl as well. But they give up 2 goals in 24 seconds with under 6 minutes to go in that hockey game, and they aren't even able to salvage a point. Not great for the Oily boys, and it came on a night where they honestly probably could have taken it, or they could have taken advantage of the fact that some teams around them also lost. So let's flash up the playoff picture here and take a look at how things are shaping up in the Western Conference. Of course, we've been tracking those head-to-head games on the show for the last couple of weeks, and the first one came last night, and it was a loss to the Dallas Stars, a 5-3 out in Dallas. So Edmonton, they're now 3 points back of the LA Kings with a game in hand. And on April 7th and March 30th, actually, they have 2 head-to-head games against the LA Kings still coming this season. But last night, you could have stayed right in there, right? You could have still been 1 point back. And then the big one was Vegas. They lost yesterday. So if you look at that, you're still 3 up on Vegas, 2 games in hand. The Oilers are in a really good spot right now. And as Losh said us on the Twitch chat, at least Vegas lost last night, and I suppose that's a positive, but at the same time, you could have created even more separation, right? So a frustrating loss on many fronts for the Oilers. Even if they would have brought that game to overtime, I probably would have been fine with it, but just the fact that they're leading late and they don't even find a way to milk a point out of that game, not great. Waz, hello Tyler, we are watching you from the office. Thank you, Waz. Hope everyone at the office is having a good time. Gannon 18, when Nuge comes back with the new edition, what does the Oilers lineup look like? That's going to be a topic I touch on in just a second here. I see Ken in the Facebook chat giving us a hello from the Netherlands. Without a doubt, the furthest away listener of this show today. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's someone that's watching further away than the Netherlands, but what's up, Ken? Yeah, so that loss last night, they had some really good stretches. There were points in that game where they were really bringing it to the Dallas Stars, but I think for the most part, the Oilers looked pretty sloppy. I know some people didn't like the first goal Mikko Koskinen gave up to Jason Robertson. It was on the ice through his legs kind of thing. I didn't love it either, but I'm also willing to cut Mikko Koskinen a little bit of slack just because he ended up making, 5, 6, 10 bell saves after that. That game could have been over a lot quicker, and the one goal against wasn't great, but he made enough really, really good saves to make up for it, in my opinion. Looking at some of the on-ice numbers from last night, Tyson Barrie had pretty good stats. When he was on the ice at 5-on-5, Oilers outshot the Stars 7-3. Yamamoto had a great game as well. Bouchard looked good. Darnell Nurse really struggled in that hockey game. He was on the ice for a total of 16 minutes and 53 seconds at 5-on-5. Oilers were outshot 15-5 in that span. So a really, really ugly night from Darnell Nurse. A lot of people pointed that out on Twitter as well. There was some fans frustrated with the effort the Oilers got from their number 1 D-man. He's had a couple rough games recently, but I still think, if you're going to rag on Darnell Nurse, what does this blue line look without him, right? We saw it for a month in December. Without Nurse, Cody Cece's your top pairing guy. I guess now Brett Kulak would at least be in the top 6, so they have that depth. But, he had a bad game, and that's fine. But I think some people were maybe going a little bit too far. People were like, 2 years from now, they're going to have to retain 50% just to get rid of him. And it's okay. He had a bad game on March 22nd in Dallas. Let's calm down maybe just a little bit. Raj, the loss last night still stings. Yeah, it does. Again, we flashed up the standings. They had a chance to create some more separation on them in Vegas and stay neck and neck with the LA Kings, and they blew it. So it's not a great loss at all. Isaac says 6 really good saves makes up for 1 bad goal against. No doubt. I'm with you 100%. Raj, I still think we need to trade away Nurse for a legit defenseman. If you don't think Darnell Nurse is a legit defenseman, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I remember the Oilers had that game against Tampa, the one in Tampa where they really outplayed them and Mike Smith just kind of crapped the bed. In that game, Victor Hedman had 3 brutal turnovers and he got out-muscled off a few pucks. And I remember watching that and kind of going like, no Oilers fan is going to pick up on that and tweet about how Victor Hedman's having a rough night. Remember, McDavid made him look like a pylon as well in the game back in Edmonton too. But Hedman had a rough night against Edmonton. And I was sitting there going, I wonder if in Tampa Bay right now, there's fans going, oh, Victor Hedman, not a legit defenseman. It's one bad game. And I'm not sitting here saying Darnell Nurse is Victor Hedman. Obviously not. But good players have bad games. And even the best defensemen turn over a lot of pucks. Again, I don't know. I just think people who don't think Nurse is a top-tier defenseman, a top-pairing defenseman, I should say, I think you need to watch some of the other D-men around the league because outside of Makar, Yossi, Hedman, Mort Seider's unbelievable as a rookie in Detroit, but outside of those, really that elite group of 4 or 5 defensemen, there's not very many more elite D-men out there. That's the reason guys like Morgan Riley and Darnell Nurse and Miro Heiskanen, those guys get paid a ton. Seth Jones got a ton out in Chicago. They get paid a lot because there's not a lot of guys who can even come close to staying above water when they're playing on a top pairing and consistently going up against the other team's best guys. So that's why I cut Darnell Nurse a little bit of slack. He can have bad games. The Oilers expect a lot out of him. They need to get a lot out of him because of how much he plays and the important role that he plays on this blue line. Sometimes you're going to get bad games. That happens with every defenseman is my point. Davin Siski. Whoa, you got the Twitch names? Part of the reason I don't go to the Twitch chat more is because I feel like I need to say your names to give you credit for contributing, but all your names are so damn hard to understand. Anyways, how do you feel about Jesse's game since he's been back? He's been brutal. He was not good last night. He's had 3 not good games since returning to the lineup, and I'll touch on this a little bit more. I wonder if maybe moving him away from Draisaitl and McDavid could do something good for Puljujarvi's game, but you need to still play him with a bit of skill. Nugent Hopkins being back, I think, could potentially change that a little bit. The only Oilers line that was firing last night was McDavid, Kane, and Yamamoto. When they were on the ice together, they played 12-40 at 5-on-5. They outshot him 7-4. Everyone else, so that third line, Ryan, Fogle, and Shore, they got outshot 7-4. Hyman, Draisaitl, and Puljujarvi broke even, and the fourth line got outshot 3-0 as well, which I thought Brad Malone had another good game. He's going back down to Bakersfield now, but I didn't mind the effort from Brad Malone in that hockey game, but they didn't muster up a shot on goal when all 3 of them were on the ice at the same time. So we'll turn the page a little bit here on that loss to Dallas. Yes, it's frustrating, but the Oilers won all 5 of the home games. They managed to get a point out of Colorado. It was a tough string of back-to-back games. You picked up a point. If you didn't blow it late, you could have gotten at least one more. Frustrating, sure, but like we kind of talked about on Sunday, not the end of the world at all, especially when you consider what the playoff picture is. Mike over on Twitter, Jesse needs to learn that when his hands aren't working, that his body can still be effective. And I actually think that's a great point. Early in the year, when Puljujarvi was having success, I feel like it's because he adapted to just being a bit more of a power forward. He's huge. He's massive. He's 6'4", over 200 pounds. And when he just kind of gets in his head that, oh, I'm bigger than everyone, put my stick on the ice, go to the net, play straight line hockey, I actually feel like he's a lot more successful. And when he's with McDavid and Draisaitl and trying to keep up to those two on the skill side of things, that's where his game falls apart. He had that chance yesterday in between the circles, 2 seconds probably to think about where he wanted to put the thing, and he just didn't shoot. He tried to make a cute play, and again, he's coming back from injury, so I'm cutting Puljujarvi a little bit of slack still for a while, but Eventually, I think they could put him down with Nugent Hopkins on the third line, and everyone's starting to get healthy now, which means the Oilers' depth up front is really, really solid. We can pull up the lines right now, courtesy of our friends at Daily Faceoff. The forwards, McDavid with Kane and Yamamoto, Draisaitl, Puljujarvi, Hyman, Shore, Ryan, Fogle, and then the fourth line, which I talked about. That's how the Oilers rolled out last game. Nuge, Archibald for half the games at least, and Brassard are all available for Thursday. So what do you do tomorrow? I think no doubt Nuge probably going back to that third line center spot. Nuge, Fogle, and Ryan worked really well before Nuge went down. So do you maybe keep that trio together, which would mean you keep Puljujarvi up in the top 6, you keep Yamamoto, Kane, McDavid together, and then your fourth line, are you playing Archibald or are you playing Brassard? The weird thing about Archibald, I don't think he's been that good since he came back into the lineup. I don't think Archibald's been, I don't think he's really earned a spot, but I feel like the Oilers feel pressure to play him when they're back up in Canada just because it's the few games he can play. At the same time, he's eligible to play in their next 5 games, because it's 4 home games and 1 against the Calgary Flames that he can drive down to, which is still hilarious. Hey, if you want to hop on the bus with us, Josh Archibald, Oilers Nation, we're taking a bus down to Calgary this weekend. There's still tickets available, courtesy of Backside Tours. I've tweeted out some links today. Go check it out. It'll be a ton of fun. Anyways, back to the lines. Where do you work in Brassard? I really do think it's tough. I would keep Archibald out. I would play McLeod on the wing, and I would play Brassard on the fourth line. And I'd go Brassard, McLeod, Cassian. Then I'd go Nuge, Fogle, Ryan, Draisaitl, Hyman, Puljujarvi, keep the top line the same. The interesting question is, how could things sort of shake down the stretch? I think they like Derek Ryan as more of a winger. Devin Shore's playing good. I think it's hard to justify taking Devin Shore out of the lineup. He had another assist last game. They have a lot of options, which is why there's a part of me that kind of sits there and goes, was the Brassard addition really needed? Is Derek Brassard going to be that much better of a fourth line center than Ryan McLeod? And the Oilers don't play their fourth line that much. So, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to end up doing. Let me know in the chat. Who would you be putting in? Who would you be taking out? How should the Oilers lineup look on Thursday against the San Jose Sharks? Gannon 18, they shouldn't feel obliged to play Archibald. He didn't get vaccinated. We tried to trade him and couldn't. I think that's a great point too. Ken Holland said he made a commitment to Archibald and his agent and said... He made a commitment to Archibald and his agent and said he was going to move him, but he didn't want to throw in a sweetener to do it, so he didn't move him. And the Oilers don't owe Archibald anything, at all. I'm just saying I think they feel a bit of pressure to play him in the lineup for the few games that he is available for. I wouldn't right now. I think Devin Shore's playing better than Archibald is. I would want to see Brassard against San Jose tomorrow as well. Like Mike Yeg 11 on Twitter. Internal competition is great. Yeah, it's fantastic, but you still want guys playing, right? Ken, Brassard fourth line is an upgrade there. Yeah, it is. I just still look and I go, man, you really wanted to bring in Brassard. You gave up a fourth to get him. Not a high pick, but a mid-round pick to bring him in. Was it necessary? I don't know. Depth is good, though, so it really is hard to complain about that move. I love the Kulak deal, by the way, just while I can give my 2 cents on that. You gave up a second. Laguson's nothing. The guy was clearing waivers. There's 100 William Lagusons around the NHL. The 7th round pick at the end, that's kind of a nothing asset as well. And the second rounders in this upcoming draft, the only way it gets pushed to 2023, which is a deeper draft as well, only way it gets pushed to 2023 is if the Oilers have to trade their second rounder in 2022 to Chicago as a part of the Keith deal. The only way that happens is if the Oilers make the Cup final, which would be unreal, and no one cares about draft picks at that point, and Duncan Keith has to play top 4 minutes. So a second for Kulak feels like a high price, but when you factor in that Montreal kept half the money, that costs you something at the deadline. So Kulak probably worth a third in all honesty, but the fact that you needed them to keep half the money so you could go make another move, that means you had to pay up a little. I don't mind it at all. I think it's a nice chance for Kulak. He's a defense-first guy. So whether you play him with Barrie or you play him with Bouchard, I think you're giving yourself a really solid third pairing, and it really gives you 6 good NHL defensemen, in my opinion. I like Barrie still. They should still trade him this summer. He's not worth the $4.5 million, especially with the other pieces the Oilers have. But I like Barrie, and he's playing some good hockey right now. So the Oilers' 6 D-men are looking good. The big question mark is going to come up front and what they end up doing with the lines. Over on the Twitch chat, they shouldn't. Oh, I read that one. Brassard, I felt, was picked up just in case someone gets hurt. I think so, but also you don't give up a 4th round pick for a guy unless you think he deserves to be in your lineup. I think especially early on, Archibald's going to get every opportunity Brassard's going to get every opportunity to play every day. Electronic Jordan, I think we have to play Brassard just because he's new. I like Archie's game. I want him to play, but we've got to play the new guy at least to see what we have, and I agree there. So I think we'll see Brassard in the lineup tomorrow. We can flash back up what the Oilers did last game. Malone's coming out because he's going down to Bakersfield. Nuge is taking that Shore spot. You're not taking out McLeod or Cassian. So are you sitting? The question becomes, you can only play one of Shore, Archibald, or Brassard. And I think you're probably picking Derek Brassard right now just so that he can get into the lineup. And Brute Daddy 96, drop Archibald all day starting now. I agree. I think you take Josh Archibald out of the lineup. Now, here's the other question. If this, let's hypothetical. Let's say it's game 82 and the Oilers have to win to get in. What's your lineup looking like? Because it's different than what I would do tomorrow. In my opinion, I think you would... the top line can stay the top line as long as they keep producing, and who knows when or if they'll stop. I would make a change, though. This would be my lineup if the Oilers were facing a must-win game. I like Ryan McLeod as a winger. I think he has potential as a winger. I think him and Draisaitl play really well together. The fact Hyman can flip to either side, I think is good as well. So I'd keep the top line the same. I'd have McLeod up on the second line with Draisaitl and Hyman. I think the big bodies of Draisaitl and Hyman work well together, and the speed of McLeod really gives that line a bit of a different flavor. Third line, I think Jesse Puljujarvi could work well away from McDavid and Draisaitl. I think it would take some pressure off him. I think it would just allow him to play more of his own style of game. And Warren Foegele, I don't love him, but he's a big body. He moves okay. I think that third line would have some potential. And then it gives you a fourth line that can actually score. Like if Derek Brassard can bring over some offense, Derek Ryan's been really good ever since Jay Woodcroft took over. Zach Kassian's been, solid. At least he's willing to mix it up every once in a while. He's got to stay out of the lineup. But this is what I would do. No reason to have Shore in there. The only concern, especially with a guy like Brassard, is he's not much of a penalty killer. But even when you have this lineup here, Yamamoto can kill, Hyman can kill, Draisaitl can, McLeod can, Nuge can, Derek Ryan can. With this lineup I've thrown together here, you still have 6 penalty killers up front. So even if one of them takes a penalty, you still have 5 guys that can be out there killing penalties for you. So that's the way I would go. Nice to see a couple of you agreeing with it. Ken, Rob, Tyler in the Facebook chat, love it. As Gannon says, we have a lot of forward depth, and the Oilers do. Like, there is a lot of depth up front. Like, that line there, healthy scratching in the scenario of my best lineup would be Shore, Malone, and Archibald. That's actually 3 pretty good players you're healthy scratching. That in itself could be your fourth line, and you're probably okay with it, right? So the depth up front is great, and I suppose the Brassard addition does help that a little bit. Mike says Ryan and Hyman on the wrong wings. Hyman can flip to either side. I know he's not as good on the right side, but for the sake of having McLeod up and giving that third line a couple of solid pieces, I don't really have a problem with flipping Hyman over. Again, I know he's maybe not as strong as a right winger, but he's played it a lot this season. They've been doing it. They were running Hyman, McLeod, and Draisaitl for a little bit. I think you can flip Hyman over. For Derek Ryan, maybe it's Derek Brassard who ends up playing the wing. Maybe you're flipping Kassian over. I think you can mix and match a little bit on the wings, especially in the bottom 6, and see if there's any sort of a fit there, just to make sure you have your 12 best forwards in the lineup. Gannon, goaltending is really our only issue. And yeah, I think so. Like, the Kulak deal really evens out your D pairings, in my opinion, and you're basically sitting there now. If you make the playoffs, when you make the playoffs, you're going to be heading in and kind of just hoping that someone grabs the reins. I don't think it's going to be Mike Smith. I don't think anyone's too confident in that. Again, I'll go back to the analogy of if you were facing a must-win situation, you're going with Mikko Koskinen right now. I know he wasn't great last game against Dallas, but he made some big stops for them. And if that's what an off night for Mikko looks like right now, I think you kind of just have to live with it. He's going to go through stretches like this. He's a hot and cold goalie. He's not a legitimate number one. So there's going to be stretches where his play is maybe subpar, but I keep rolling with Mikko here. I think they're treating him like he's the number one as well. Will they start him against San Jose? I might go back to Mike Smith against San Jose just because I'd want to go Mikko against Calgary. And that's the way I'd dish it out. If you have a rotation going down the stretch, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Gannon, Tyler, come back for hot takes, please. TSN 1260, hot takes on the Nielsen show. I would be back, but Dustin's scared of me, and he's been very vocal about that. Dave, okay, I like this question. David Morrow, why is nothing said about McDavid playing the 2-on-1 like garbage in OT against Ottawa and not picking up the stick for the game-winning goal against Dallas? His defense has to get better. The 2-on-1, I don't think you can blame McDavid at all on that. Like, it's 3-on-3 overtime, first off, which is a shit show at the best of times. And it's a 2-on-1 with Makar and McKinnon, so 2 of the best players in the NHL. it's a broken play up ice. Everything's happening quickly, and Connor McDavid doesn't defend 2-on-1s. I mean, the overtime play, there's nothing there. Could he have picked up the stick for the game winner against Dallas? Yeah, he could have. I think Darnell Nurse didn't play that very well either, though. I don't know. I think sometimes people are too tough on McDavid in terms of his defense not being good enough. I think the same thing with Draisaitl. I think sometimes people just see them put up big numbers, see them make the odd mistake in the defensive zone, and are like, oh, well, they suck defensively. Like, that's it. I don't have a huge problem with them defensively. Their defensive metrics are usually pretty solid. They score you a ton of points. It's nitpicky to me. Like, there's bigger problems with this team than the way Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl play defense. Just looking quickly, I'm seeing Frank is reporting that the NHL is in the process of voiding the Evgeny Dadonov's trade from Vegas to the Ducks. This is fascinating. So, if you don't know what's going on with this, basically, the Ottawa Senators signed Evgeny Dadonov a couple summers ago or whatever to a contract that included a 10-team no-trade list. So he had to submit it by a certain date. Dadonov did submit it, had 10 teams on it. The Anaheim Ducks were one of them, but then Ottawa went ahead and traded him to Vegas last summer. At some point, there was confusion. Someone got confused, and Vegas thought either the no-trade list wasn't valid or that it was a different list, and the NHL was in the same boat. The Golden Knights, who desperately need cap space, they have to shed some money or else they won't be able to activate guys like Martinez and Stone before the playoffs. And I think Martinez is going to be healthy, so they need the cap space. They dump him off along with a second-round pick to Anaheim for Ryan Kessler's contract, which sits in LTIR, and defenseman John Moore. Well, then Dadonov says, hold up, I'm not going there. They're on my no-trade list. Trade's getting flipped back. Now Vegas is sitting there, and I mean, Mike's laughing in the Twitter chat. I'm laughing too. Like, it's great to watch Vegas get screwed like this because it feels like everything's gone that franchise's way since they came into the league. But now Vegas doesn't have the money, and their options are trade Dadonov now, which would suck for Dadonov because that means he can't play at all. If they trade him to whoever in the next week, his season is done. Can't play regular season, can't play playoffs. But now every other team knows they have Vegas screwed. So Vegas needed to trade a second to get rid of Dadonov 2 days ago. I bet you it's a first now. And their 2023 first is caught up in a conditional in the Eichel deal. And 2024. So is Vegas going to have to part with one of their next 2 first-round picks just to get rid of Dadonov, just so they can activate the guys they already have off LTIR? It's fascinating stuff. The other side of that is a lot of the models I look at, they're not even giving Vegas a 50% shot at the playoffs anymore. Like, let's pull up the playoff picture again here. Vegas is sitting 1 point back of Dallas, and Dallas has 4 games in hand. They're sitting, 5, 6 back. It's very tiny writing for me to read on my screen. They're saying 6 back of Nashville. You're not catching Nashville either because they got games in hand. Vegas is sitting 3 back of the Oilers. Edmonton has 2 games in hand. So even if you win one of those games in hand, if you're the Edmonton Oilers, you're going to be sitting there up 5 points on Vegas. And like you can see on the side, they only have 1 head-to-head game against each other. So I don't know. And against LA, like, Vegas doesn't have a great shot at catching LA either. LA has a game in hand. They're 6 points up. It's Vegas is in a world of hurt here. Cap crunch wise, playoff picture wise, they can't stop losing. Robin Leonard's still not healthy. Who knows if he won't be 100% at all this year. He's got a torn labrum in his right shoulder and like his kneecap is cracked or something stupid like that. So things aren't getting any easier for the Vegas Golden Knights. I'm checking who they play. Like, they get Nashville tomorrow night. Man, what's the rest of Vegas's schedule? Now I'm actually kind of curious. Gonna wrap this up right away as well. I see your question, Ken. I'll get to that too. But they go Nashville tomorrow. That is Vegas. And then it gets easier. They go Chicago, and then they get back-to-backs against the Seattle Kraken. Back-to-back days up in Seattle. And then they go 2 against Vancouver, 1 against Arizona, then another one against Vancouver. So they actually have a handful. After this Nashville game, their schedule does get a little bit easier. And then after that, they go Calgary, Edmonton, New Jersey, Washington. So strength of schedule probably does favor the Vegas Golden Knights, but they've been losing some easy games recently as well. Ken in the Facebook chat, how far, with this current roster, how far can this team go this year? If they play LA in round 1, I think they can beat LA in round 1. I think the matchup there is good. I don't think LA's blue line is perfect by any stretch. Not that I think Edmonton's is, but I think it's a wash when you compare the two blue lines, in my opinion. Forwards, Edmonton's deep now. Like, I think if it's not a wash, Edmonton gets a slight advantage, but it's close. And then between the pipes, Cal Peterson and Jonathan Quick have been pretty up and down this season. So has Mikko Koskinen. Mike Smith's been flat out terrible. But Mikko Koskinen's been up and down this year. Like, that might be the one spot where the head-to-head matchup in net, if they play Calgary, Calgary's got the edge in net. If they play Vegas and Vegas is, has Robin Lehner healthy, Vegas has the edge in net. LA doesn't have as big of an edge in net, and that's why I think they could beat the LA Kings, because I think Edmonton's lineup is a little bit better, and the goaltending is at least close, where compared to some other matchups, it's not. So I think they can beat the LA Kings and go to the second round this year. I think that's a good expectation to have for this team if you're an Oilers fan. I like this suggestion from Andrew. He says go Brassard, McLeod, Hyman as your third line. And if we flash up what I had as kind of my best lineup, if you were to go McLeod, Brassard, Hyman on the third line, does that mean you're making Nuge a winger? And then you're bumping Hyman down and you're going Leon with Nuge and Puljujarvi? And then you're going McDavid, Kane, Yamamoto, Brassard. Well, who is the other pieces on that? Brassard, McLeod, Hyman on your third line. And then that would mean you'd go Fogle, Derek Ryan, and Zach Kassian as your fourth line. That's not bad, actually. I don't hate that suggestion. We'll see what Jay Woodcroft ends up doing tomorrow. I mean, if you do something tomorrow and it clicks, you're probably going to keep running with it here, considering they have everyone available to them for the next few games. Michael, do you see Mike Smith possibly taking the crease back before the playoffs? Maybe. He was good against Colorado. He was good against Buffalo. So it's been back-to-back good games by Mike Smith. He needs to keep kind of rolling along. He needs to do it more than twice. Mikko Koskinen went on a run where he did it like 13 times in a row there, where he wasn't getting lit up in any of the starts. It was 3 or less in regulation for 12 or 13 in a row. Mike Smith probably has to do something like that to take the starter's crease back from Mikko Koskinen. It'll be interesting to see what the Oilers do tomorrow. Again, they're taking on San Jose, and then Saturday, Battle of Alberta down in Calgary. We are doing our bus trip out there as well. If you want to come, do it. It'll be a great time. Like, we go pretty hard when we do this Calgary trip, and the bus will be a good time. I got the tweet up right now. I'm going to give it another retweet right now. So head over to my Twitter, and you can check out the bus trip to Calgary. It's super cheap. Like, I think if you do double occupancy, it's under $350, and that gets you a ticket to the game, the bus ride out, and your hotel rooms. If you go quad occupancy, you and 3 buddies, $280 a person. Ticket to the game, hotel, bus ride out there, and the bus ride is going to be a great time. I think Jay and I are going to be doing the pregame show live on the bus because he really wants to do it. So yeah, it'll be a ton of fun. Check it all out. This has been Oilers Nation Live. Shout out to our friends at Sherwood Ford the Giant as well. And thanks to everyone who tuned in. I was honestly going to stop this and not do the Wednesday show after the deadline because I wasn't sure if there's going to be enough to talk about, but we filled up 30 minutes pretty easily today, and honestly wouldn't be able to do it if there weren't so many people tuning in. So thanks to everyone who did tune in to the show today. We'll have more topics next week, and I'll chat with you then. Thanks for watching.